Tonight on News 12, a Vote 2024 election debate from the Optimum headquarters and News 12 studios. The fiery political rematch in the battle for Long Island's 4th Congressional District. Republican Anthony D'Esposito and Democrat Laura Gillen are vying for your vote and answering your questions. Local elections lead to national change, and this News 12 Vote 2024 election debate with moderator Rich Barabi starts right now.
And welcome to this News 12 Vote 2024 election debate. We are coming to you from our Optimum headquarters and News 12 studios in Bethpage. Thanks for joining us. I'm Rich Barabi. Tonight, these two candidates face off in a 2022 rematch. It's in our 4th Congressional District. That includes most of the town of Hempstead, the city of Long Beach, and a small portion of the town of North Hempstead. If you live in the area, up on your screen right now, one of these two candidates will become your representative in Congress next year. Republican Anthony D'Esposito is the incumbent. He won that seat 2 years ago. Before being elected to Congress, he spent years as a councilman in the town of Hempstead, and before that, he worked as a detective in the NYPD. His opponent is Democrat Laura Gillen. She previously served as the Hempstead town supervisor. She was the first Democrat elected to lead the town in over 100 years. Thank you both for being here.
Thanks, Rich.
Thank you, Rich.
Tonight's debate is an hour with limited commercial interruption. The candidates have agreed to the News 12 debate rules. They'll each have 90 seconds to answer the questions, many of which you submitted. Rebuttals will get 30 seconds, and we begin now with opening statements. Each candidate will have a minute. Laura Gillen won the coin toss. She decided to go second, so Congressman D'Esposito, you're first.
Well, thanks, Rich, and thanks, News 12, for hosting this debate. You know, tonight this debate is about words becoming action. And 2 years ago, I stood on a very similar stage and debated my opponent, who's now been rejected by voters 3 times, and talked about the issues that were plaguing the American people under the failed leadership of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. We talked about the border, and over a year and a half ago, House Republicans passed H.R. 2, the most comprehensive border bill to secure our border, but it's been ignored by Democrats. I said that I was going to be a bipartisan representative, representing the very diverse district that is New York's 4th Congressional District, and I've been named the 11th most bipartisan member of Congress. I said that I was going to deliver for the communities, every community here in the 4th Congressional District, and I'm proud to say that I've already delivered $20 million in community projects, with $30 million more on the way. This is about turning words into action, and I've turned that action over the last year and a half in Congress, while my opponent's campaign has been based on lies, deceit, and gaslighting.
All right, former Supervisor Gillen.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Laura Gillen, and I'm humbly asking for your vote in the 4th Congressional District. This is a district where I have deep roots. My Italian immigrant grandfather settled in the district and supported his family by working in the sanitation department for the town of Hempstead. And in just 2 generations, my family went from the back of a garbage truck to the CEO's office when I became supervisor of the same town. That's the American dream. That's what we all want for our children, to have the opportunity to do a little bit better than we did. There's so much more that unites us than divides us, but Washington is broken. Hyperpartisanship is preventing anything from getting done. There are serious problems we have to fix. We have to secure our border. We have to get reproductive freedom protected. We have to lower costs for the families in this district. My opponent has been there for 2 years and he hasn't delivered. In Congress, I will.
All right, thank you both. Let's get to the questions now. And Congressman D'Esposito, we want to give you the opportunity here to go on the record about what has been in the news regarding your staffing decisions and how they've intersected with your personal life. The New York Times report on September 23rd laid out what analysts say are possible ethics violations by you. Congressman, is it true? Did you hire both your alleged mistress and fiance's daughter to work at your district office?
Absolutely not. My hiring practices were done above board, and there was absolutely zero ethics violated in any of my decisions. And while we're going to focus on things like alleged corruption and alleged nepotism, I mean, we should focus on some of the last month's headlines from newspapers throughout this country. Democratic House candidate Laura Gillen decried corruption while she handed $1.5 billion to Coliseum contract to donor. A progressive dark money network paid New York Democrat candidate's salary. Incredibly problematic, says a nonprofit watchdog group. Top House Democrat candidate pays connected Democrats and her husband's business partners, reported by the Washington Reporter. And you rewind back to the time when Laura Gillen was elected supervisor. In just her first few days in office, she hired over $2 million in patronage hires from the Nassau County Democratic Party. They were the who's who of Suffolk and Nassau County Democrats. The fact is that Laura Gillen is the one that has spent her tenure in short elected office utilizing patronage and nepotism. What we've seen in this campaign is someone who is spreading lies, is enabling deceit, and is dividing this district. She has not focused on any issues that matter to the people here in this district.
Well, I just want to follow up briefly, and then Laura Gillen, I'll give you a chance to respond. The House ethics rules say members of Congress may not engage in a sexual relationship with any employee of the House who works under that member. Are you saying right now that this does not apply to you?
I am well aware, and absolutely it does not apply to me.
All right, Supervisor Gillen, you were invoked there in Congressman D'Esposito's response. You'll have 30 seconds here to respond in kind.
So this is a thorough investigation by the New York Times that was backed up by multiple credible resources, including the husband of the mistress that Mr. D'Esposito hired to work in his office. These are very serious allegations that deserve a full investigation by the House Ethics Committee, and it's just the continuation of a course of conduct that Mr. D'Esposito has followed throughout his service and government roles. A Supreme Court judge found that he violated the Code of Ethics in the town of Hempstead and abused his authority to give out favors to his friends and family, and that's what he's doing in Congress.
Congressman, just a brief response here, and then we're going to move on.
Laura has spent her failed time in attempted elected office and running campaigns exactly on this issue. She refuses to focus on what actually matters to the American people. If you look at the over $20 million that she's already spent on advertisements and campaign ads, none of them focus on what she actually wants to do or plans on doing for the American people. It all focuses on what ifs, allegations, and lies and dividing people. I mean, she literally at this point represents everything that makes the American people angry and upset with elected office and politics.
All right, well, Supervisor Gillen, you were the subject of a recent news story of which the congressman just mentioned, a New York Post report about an instance of potential favoritism, saying you helped hand a $1.5 million contract to renovate the area around the Nassau Coliseum to a political donor. The Post says that company and its CEO donated thousands of dollars to your campaign leading up to the 2019 deal, thousands more to your run for Congress. We checked the election records. We confirmed the donations. Is there anything you want to clarify about that report?
Well, this is a ridiculous, baseless attack, and Congressman D'Esposito knows that. The contract that he's talking about is the contract to have the Coliseum and renovate the Coliseum. That contract was given out by the Republican-controlled Nassau County Legislature. He sat with me in town hall, and he knows that that contract never came before us, and we never voted on it. This is smoke and mirrors to try to respond to the serious, credible, proven allegations that were reported in the New York Times about his historic corruption and handing out favors to friends and family, including his mistress, in his congressional office.
All right, well, I just want to follow up on that briefly because, Laura, you did say in Newsday in 2019 it took two Democrats, Laura Curran, the then county executive, and Laura Gillen, to finally get something at the hub. So you're saying you did have a role in at least making something happen there at the hub.
So look, we need to do something at the hub. That's 77 acres of barren land that's not generating any tax revenue for our town and for our county. And I was proud to stand along Aaron King Sweeney and be a part of the hub redevelopment committee to talk to our neighbors and find out what was going to be the best use of that property. But I had no ability to vote on that contract. I wasn't consulted about that contract. It was a county contract awarded by the Republican-controlled Nassau County Legislature.
Congressman, 30-second response.
Well, Rich, I think what Laura's doing right there is admitting to what many of us already know. She has spent her short term as a supervisor taking the credit for everyone else's work. She's either saying that she was part of this historic development at the hub with Laura Curran, or she's saying that she had nothing to do with it. I didn't write the article, but I think that it warrants an investigation. It is clear, as you mentioned, that the donations were made to Laura Gillen, and she continues to tell the press one thing. She's involved. She says that it was because of her work with Laura Curran that this was a possibility. But then today, years later, she's telling us, well, I had nothing to do with it.
All right, let's move on here. We have several questions from our viewers, and many of which are about the recent rise in anti-Semitic incidents. It has some families scared. Some say they're hiding their faith in public. Avi from West Hempstead is issuing this powerful plea for help.
Since the massacre in Israel on October 7th, anti-Semitism has skyrocketed all over the world, including here in District 4. Leaving synagogue in West Hempstead on Rosh Hashanah, somebody shouted, "Heil Hitler," at us. As the grandson of a Holocaust survivor, that sends chills down my spine. Parents are wondering, where is it safe for their children to walk around visibly Jewish, be it with a yarmulke or a Jewish star? My question is, what will you do to curb the cancer of anti-Semitism that is rapidly spreading throughout our nation? Thank you.
Congressman, we'll start with you. This is happening in 2024 on Long Island.
And I appreciate Avi's question, and I think that this isn't about what you are going to do. For me, it's what have I done and what will I continue to do. I have been at the forefront in calling and rooting out anti-Semitism. I was chosen by the Speaker of the House to sit on the National Holocaust Museum Board, which allows me to bring resources to combat anti-Semitism into communities, not only here on Long Island, but across the United States of America. I sit on the first ever parliamentary working group, a bipartisan group between the House Knesset in Israel and the House of Representatives here in the United States to share intelligence, to talk about this rise in anti-Semitism. I've put legislation on the floor of the House, which has passed in a bipartisan fashion, condemning terms like from the river to the sea, where people who have voted against it are actually part of the Democratic Party. When you talk about what I do on the ground here, I am constantly in the Jewish communities. I work with our local police departments in bringing close to $10 million in funding to our local police departments for education, for training, to make sure that they can keep not only our synagogues and yeshivas safe, but all of our schools and our houses of worship safe. I have visited Columbia University, where we've seen the party of protesters, which is the Democratic Party, take reign on places like Columbia. I have led the efforts and urged House leadership to continue on with our committee hearings to call out and root out the educational institutions and make sure that they're defunded. And my opponent, well, she was paid a hefty price by Soros, George Soros, who continues to fund these anti-Semitic protests at college campuses.
All right, former Supervisor Gillen, your response to the question and the accusation there at the end.
Look, I think this is an issue where Anthony D'Esposito and I are aligned. We are both gravely concerned about the rise of anti-Semitism. It was rising before October 7th, and it's gotten just so much worse. And I think it's great that we put pressure and that he put pressure on university presidents who weren't delivering, who were failing in keeping their students safe. This is a really big problem for the people who live in the 4th Congressional District. But I think there's more that we can do. And that's why I laid out my anti-Semitism action plan to make sure that we are doing everything we can at the federal level to conquer this problem. And it starts with leveraging federal dollars that are sent to colleges to make sure that they are enforcing codes of ethics and codes of responsibility, so that if professors or students are engaging in this violent, hate-filled behavior, that they are expelled or fired. I also think we need to send more dollars to the Office of Civil Rights to make sure that is the office in the Department of Education that investigates claims of anti-Semitism. We need to send more dollars and more resources. We need to not cut funding for the FBI, which also investigates these claims. And we need to address violent speech on social media, which is not protected speech, to make sure that we are moderating and not inciting more violence on social media. That's what I want to do when I get to Congress for you.
Well, just to follow up, quick 30 seconds here, what would you do to combat some of that hateful language we see on social media?
So look, I think we got to work with social media platforms to make sure that they are looking at what is on their platforms and address anti-Semitic, violent speech, or any kind of violent hate speech, because that is not protected by the First Amendment and should not be promulgated throughout these social media platforms.
All right, our next question comes to us from Sarah. She's from Uniondale. Of course, you both served in the town of Hempstead. And Sarah's question is directed to you, Congressman, so you'll answer this one first. She wants to know if you can identify specifically how you've served the Black and Hispanic population in your district.
Absolutely. I don't think that serving as a member of Congress or being a member of the Hempstead Town Board is about serving a specific community. I think it's about serving all communities and understanding exactly what those communities need. And that's why one of the hallmarks of me not only serving as a councilman but as a member of Congress is being out in the community every single day, whether it's in the 5 towns or Levittown, whether it's in Uniondale or Garden City, and everywhere in between. And I've heard from my neighbors in some of the communities that are dealing with some economic problems, and made sure that we protect funding so that they continue to have the food and necessary things that they need to continue on a healthy life. We've worked with Nassau County and the town of Hempstead to provide funding into these communities, infrastructure projects, community development to make sure that their downtowns are brightened. That's what this is about. It's about communicating with the people each and every day. It's about talking to the people that own local businesses and make sure that we bring, like we've done before, the SBA into the district so that they can talk to them to see what loans are available, how we can help on a federal level, talking to the local fire departments, the Chamber of Commerce's, to make sure that they have the resources that they need, specifically that come from Washington, D.C. But we see from the numbers, I've delivered funding, and it's not just been to certain communities, it's been to every single community in the 4th Congressional District.
All right, former Supervisor Gillen, how would you serve people of color if elected to Congress?
Well, I think that answer is quite interesting, because in the 4th Congressional District is the village of Hempstead. It's the largest village in the United States, and it's an integral part of this district. And I know that the officials in Hempstead said Anthony D'Esposito has never, ever spoken with them. We have a huge water contamination problem in Hempstead. And in fact, when I was out talking to voters there, a woman came up to me and she gave me an envelope and she said, "I want you to have this envelope. Please look at this envelope. I'm a 70-year-old lady and I got 5,000 signatures to try to get help for our community to deal with water contamination." I know I've talked to the village officials about this issue. This is an issue I'm going to tackle when I get to Congress to make sure we are sending federal dollars to help clean up the contamination in Hempstead. And I don't know how you could say you represent our Black and brown communities when you voted to restore a Confederate monument to Arlington National Cemetery. 20% of your district is Black, and that is a glorification of slavery. I will be in these districts. I will be communicating with every race, every ethnicity, and every faith in my district when I serve you in Congress.
Congressman, a quick response there.
Well, I think what's first, I'll focus on the first comment that Laura made, and either she's lying or the village officials in Hempstead are lying, because I've met with Mayor Hobbs on multiple occasions to talk about things that Hempstead needed. And as a matter of fact, in the last appropriations, the village of Hempstead submitted multiple projects that are now going through the legislative process. So again, either Laura Gillen is telling stories and lying about the actual facts. When we look at what is actually happening is that I am working with every community. I'm working with mayors. I'm working with leaders in every single community to make those communities even better.
And former Supervisor Gillen, just a quick response there.
So when I appear at events in Hempstead, the mayor, the trustees often say, "We never hear from Congressman D'Esposito, and he's not sending any money to us."
All right, we'll continue to get to more topics here throughout the night on News 12. Stay there, we've got you covered already with a whole lot of discussion, and there's more to come, like taxes, housing, the cost of living, and abortion access. The News 12 debate from Optimum headquarters is just getting started. We're back with the candidates right after this. Welcome back to Optimum Headquarters and the News 12 studios. Right now, a debate for the 4th Congressional District is well underway. Republican Anthony D'Esposito, he is the incumbent, and Democrat Laura Gillen, she's the challenger. They're both here answering many of your questions tonight. Now to one of the most contentious topics this election cycle. It is abortion access. Here in New York, there are significant protections. However, there are calls from some for a national abortion ban now that Roe v. Wade was struck down by the Supreme Court. Donna from Lynbrook wants to know, how would you vote on a national abortion bill? We'll begin here with the former supervisor, Laura Gillen.
So this issue is very personal to me. About 19 years ago, my husband and I were expecting a baby daughter, and we went in for what we thought was going to be a routine visit, and we found out that our baby had no heartbeat. And I was very advanced in my pregnancy, 18 or 19 weeks along, and I was facing a condition where I could develop sepsis and die and leave my 2 children without a mother and not have the ability to have more children. And so I needed abortion care. I needed to have a procedure called a D&E, and that procedure saved my life. We must protect reproductive freedom in this country. It is not a state's right, it's a human right. I will always vote for reproductive freedom. I will vote for the Women's Health Protection Act. I will vote to protect the access to IVF. When it comes to reproductive freedom, I am the candidate that you can trust.
Thank you for sharing your personal story. Congressman D'Esposito, on the issue of abortion, Republicans have been hearing about this. Would you codify Roe versus Wade? Would you support a national abortion ban? Where do you stand on the issue?
So I think that this is the same conversation that we had 2 years ago on a similar stage, and where Laura Gillen told everyone listening that God forbid Anthony D'Esposito becomes a member of Congress and there's a Republican majority, they will immediately vote to ban abortion nationwide. I've made it very clear that I would never, ever support a nationwide abortion ban. I have co-sponsored 4 bipartisan bills to protect access to IVF, one most recently to provide tax credits to families who utilize IVF. I was one of the few members who made sure that the House Agriculture Appropriations Bill never made it to daylight on the House floor. Why? Because it restricted women's access to mifepristone. So I have been a champion of women's rights in the House of Representatives. And lastly, with my 40 seconds remaining, I want to touch on an ad that Laura Gillen is running. It talks about me criminalizing doctors who perform abortions, and I want to talk about the actual legislation. So that legislation simply says this: if a woman is having an abortion, the doctor is performing an abortion, so we're not restricting the right to an abortion, and that baby is born because the abortion isn't done correctly, the law says that the doctor has to provide every bit of medical care to that living baby that was just born. If the care isn't provided to keep it alive, then yes, the doctor would be responsible. That doesn't seem to me as extremism. It seems to me that that's common sense. And what it shows is Laura Gillen continues to lie to the voters. And it also shows her extremism in that she is okay with babies dying that late in a term.
Laura, your response?
Actions speak louder than words. Anthony D'Esposito told a reporter that he would probably vote for a national abortion ban. When he got into Congress, he didn't vote for the Women's Health Protection Act. When it came to pushing IVF legislation on the floor, he wouldn't buck his party, and he wouldn't sign a discharge petition to bring that bill to a vote. He said that he supports the Dobbs decision. It's a state's right. Women are dying in parking lots, bleeding out. How many women dying are you okay with, Anthony D'Esposito?
Congressman, your response?
Again, Laura has continued to gaslight everyone who's listening to this debate, as well as the $20 million that she spent on ads focusing on lies and deception about my stance on abortion. I have never and will never vote for legislation to restrict abortion access. I would never support a nationwide abortion ban. I've been a champion in supporting women's access when it comes to IVF, as well as making sure that they continue to have access to mifepristone by bucking my own party to make sure that that appropriations bill never saw the day of light.
All right, let's move on to immigration now. It's been a heated topic both on the national and local stage, much as this topic has. We've received a lot of viewer questions on this issue, and it comes down to what will you do to address border concerns if elected? And this time, Congressman, we'll start with you.
Sure. So 2 years ago, I said that one of the most important things facing the American people was securing our southern border. My opponent told me that I was fear-mongering. Now you fast forward almost 2 years, and just recently she came out with an ad. I'm on the border, the Nassau County border, and she wants to secure the border. Just weeks before President Biden was thrown out of the campaign to run for president, my opponent and Democrats throughout the country told us that the border was secure, and they said that the economy was booming. All of a sudden, Kamala Harris becomes the nominee, and now they want to secure the border, and they want to fix the economy. They're lying to everyone. The only party who's done anything to secure our border in the House of Representatives are the Republicans. Back in April, passed H.R. 2, the Secure the Border Act. It's the most comprehensive border bill that this country has seen. It would have stopped the illegal migrants coming into this country. My opponent talks about supporting this bipartisan border bill. It doesn't exist, Laura. I'm not sure if you didn't read the bill or you're just depending on staffers to tell you what's in it. The bill never made it out of the Senate. It didn't have support from Democrats in the Senate. The starting point should have been H.R. 2. We passed it out of the House. It went to the Senate. And you know what happened? Democrats got in our way. They've obstructed us every step of the way because until they actually looked at polls, they didn't want to secure the border. I spent the last 18 months as part of the Homeland Security Committee fighting every day. We impeached Secretary Mayorkas and we enacted H.R. 2, which the Democrats should have taken up immediately.
Laura Gillen, you have been talking about this issue of border security on the campaign trail. What's your plan to fix it?
Look, our immigration system is broken. It's been broken for decades because of a lack of political will on both sides of the aisle. We need to secure our southern border. We need comprehensive immigration reform to create a legal pathway to citizenship, to fix the broken asylum system, and to bring the resources we need to secure our border. And that will be a priority on day one for me. My opponent talks about this bill that he passed. It was a hyper-partisan bill that they knew had zero chance of ever becoming law. They passed it so we could have a talking point in this debate. We had progress. We saw a Republican, one of the most conservative Republican senators, a Democrat and an independent work together, hammering out compromise to get a bipartisan border deal. That is progress. Was it perfect? Maybe not. But what should have happened is something should have moved forward. But Donald Trump told my opponent and his colleagues, don't solve the crisis because we want to campaign on it. That is putting party over country, and that is something that I will never do. I will reach across the aisle to solve the border crisis and to get something done for the people in this district. And when 40,000 migrants were sent to New York, my opponent applauded Governor Abbott and said it was a good move. And he didn't get any help for New York when we were dealing with this crisis.
All right, Congressman, the bipartisan Senate bill that we're talking about here was proposed by a conservative Republican, James Lankford. It seemed to have momentum before reportedly the former president, Donald Trump, told Republicans on the Hill, back away from this. It's not good for the election cycle. Is that what happened? And would you have supported it if it reached the House?
No, I wouldn't have supported it regardless of what President Trump said. I don't govern based on what President Donald Trump tells the Republican conference. I've made that very clear in many of the decisions and many of the votes that I've made. And as a matter of fact, I find it funny because I've been called by my opponent a MAGA extremist, and then I've been called by far-right conservatives a rhino. So it seems to me that I'm playing the middle and actually doing what the people of the 4th Congressional District want. What it takes in Congress to find solutions to problems is to build coalitions. Laura Gillen does not have the ability to build any coalitions. She was the town of Hempstead supervisor for 2 years before she was rejected by voters. And in the first few days, actually had a coalition of Republicans and a Democrat who wanted to work with her. And in a matter of weeks, she sued our only labor union, and she absolutely destroyed the relationships and that coalition. She doesn't work well with anyone. Being a member of Congress is hard work. It's not an easy job. You're away from your friends, your home, your family. It is hard work. It's not about your ego, Laura. It's not just about winning an election. It's about actually doing work for the American people. And about this bill, it was a surrender, not a solution. What this bill did was codify the disastrous policies that Joe Biden put in place. I don't understand why what my opponent calls a hyper-partisan bill in H.R. 2, that should have been the starting point. If you were in Congress, that's when Democrats should have came to Republicans and said, we clearly have a problem. Let's fix it. And let the starting point be the only piece of legislation that's passed. And just one more thing. Quickly. We are dealing with right here a border security issue. You combining immigration and border security clearly shows people listening at home that you don't understand the issue.
Let's let the former supervisor in here to respond. I want to give you the full minute 30, Laura, on the issue of the border and also the accusations the congressman made about working and building coalitions.
So, look, we had a deal. There was a deal in the Senate that one of the most conservative senators said was one of the best deals he thought he could ever get, and they chose to do nothing. When they were passing this hyper-partisan bill, they did not reach out to the other side. You want to talk about working together? He did not reach out to the other side. Not one Democrat voted for that bill. Ladies and gentlemen, if we're going to have comprehensive immigration reform, it has to be bipartisan. We have to have buy-in from both sides, because otherwise, if you pass a hyper-partisan bill, as soon as the majority changes in the next Congress, it's going to get thrown out again. We need a lasting solution to our border crisis. That is what I am going to work for every day, and work across the aisle with colleagues on both sides to make sure we deliver that, because you deserve it. The American people deserve it, and it needs to be done. In the town of Hempstead, just to respond to that nonsense, I was the supervisor. I was one vote. The only way I could get things done, and he knows this, is if Republicans voted with me. And I was proud to lead the charge on ethics reform, on a multi-year capital plan, and on, for 2 years, the entire time I was town of Hempstead supervisors, your taxes went down. Today, the town of Hempstead is going to vote on raising them a whopping 12%.
All right, let's move on. There's one other issue tied to the border and immigration that was brought up by one of our viewers, and it affects all of us. The U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration says transnational criminal organizations in Mexico are smuggling large amounts of fentanyl into the U.S. And we know there are plenty of Long Islanders who have lost loved ones to the deadly drug. Dr. Jeffrey Reynolds from Garden City is the president and CEO of the Family and Children's Association. You may have seen him here on News 12 before. He has this question for you both.
Well, border security is absolutely critical to addressing the fentanyl crisis. How will you boost access to addiction treatment and evidence-based prevention programs so that we reduce the demand for fentanyl and all other drugs?
And Laura, we'll start with you on this one.
Sure. So we have a mental health and an addiction crisis in this district and in this county. We need to make sure that we are directing every resource we can to conquer these problems. I have a plan on how we can work together across the aisle. Mental health and opioid addiction is not a Republican issue. It's not a Democratic issue. It's an American issue, and it's one that we need to solve badly. So in Congress, I will make sure that we are not cutting funds like my opponent did to fund child welfare programs, mental health programs, suicide prevention programs. I will be making sure that we get the help we need to solve and conquer these problems by working with nonprofits like the one Jeff Reynolds is in charge of, and working with other nonprofit agencies that conquer these types of problems. My opponent has voted to cut funding for these things. He did it in April of 2023, and then he did it in September of 2023. That is not something that I will support when I go to the House.
Okay, Congressman, your response to Dr. Reynolds' question.
Well, first I'm going to respond to Ms. Gillen's claim that funding was cut. She's referencing probably the minibus, which was passed in September and April. And I just want to point out that in additional to the Republicans voting, 207 Democrats voted for that. Why? Because it was important to keep the government open. So those are the facts that should be delivered to the people listening. Listen, I have been someone who's been on the front lines for many years when it comes to opioid addiction and making sure that communities throughout the entire district have resources they need. I started a program as a councilman in the town of Hempstead and continue it today, where I go and teach about opioid addiction and how to distribute and administer Narcan. I've distributed over 15,000 of those opioid kits, hearing from people pretty regularly and saying, I went to your class and thank God I was able to save my niece or nephew or my son and daughter. And when it comes to the work that I've done in the House, one of the things that was part of H.R. 2 that actually we disagreed with our party, and just to point out how Congress actually works, H.R. 2 first passed the Homeland Security Committee, which is made up of Republicans and Democrats. So to say that we didn't speak to Democrats is absolutely false, because Democrats actually sat there as we did the bill. One of the things that especially the Long Islanders who are on the Homeland Security Committee, we made sure that funding for non-governmental organizations similar to the ones that we're hearing from, NGOs, continued to have the funding that they needed to fight opioid epidemic and other drug issues.
All right, let's go to our next question now, and this one is about flooding and future storms. Some are worried about the future of our island, including Daniel from Oceanside. Here's his question.
Reports like the New York State Climate Impacts Assessment show that by 2040, communities in New York's 4th District will experience extreme flooding. Now, one day I hope to start a family in my community, but I'm worried about the long-term effects that climate change will have in NY4. Therefore, I want to ask, what specific solutions would you pass to deal with the climate crisis so that New York's 4th District can be without these extreme, life-destroying weather effects?
And the report Daniel's referring to there is from the New York State Climate Impacts Assessment. In that report, it also says sea level at Montauk could increase by 15 to 21 inches by the 2050s, Congressman.
So first, I think what we should point out is what I wouldn't do to support this problem, and that is to just haphazardly support every green energy policy that comes across our desks. I do not support offshore wind. I was just asked the other day, why don't you support offshore wind and certain battery storage? Don't you think that would decrease flooding in places like your hometown of Island Park? I don't really see how building offshore wind farms and giant battery storage facilities are going to stop flooding in low-lying areas. What we have to focus in on is a couple of things. We have to focus on making sure that the National Flood Insurance is funded and that there's equal playing fields for everyone involved. Secondly, we need to continue with working with the Army Corps of Engineers, like I have, not only throughout the district, but in villages, like with Democratic Mayor Bobby Kennedy in Freeport, working with the Army Corps of Engineers and others, talking about potential floodgates. We need to continue to fund projects along our South Shore, along our beaches, Jones Beach, Point Lookout, Lido, Long Beach, Atlantic Beach, the Barrier Island, to replenish our shorelines and make sure that we have the funding for jetties and other work that's done along our beaches. And lastly, we need to continue to, one, educate, and two, provide the funding into these communities to make sure that they have the hazard mitigation funding to make sure that their infrastructure is better, increase the diameter of their pipes so that flooding is not as bad as it used to be.
That's time. And former Supervisor Gillen.
Look, we all remember the devastation that was ravaged upon Long Island after Superstorm Sandy. We remember our neighbors not knowing when they would get power back, houses washed away. It's not a matter of if, it's just a question of when the next superstorm comes our way. And I was proud of the work that I did as supervisor to make sure that we are addressing the impacts of these storms and preparing ourselves for the next one. We did storm stabilization projects in Valley Stream, in Point Lookout, by rebuilding the dunes, working with the Army Corps of Engineers, by creating living barrier reefs. And we did all of these projects with government funds, with grants from state, from GOSER, and from federal grants. And that's the way we should continue to do this. I was actually quite surprised when I read the Newsday endorsement of me in this race, and they said that when Anthony D'Esposito talked to them about flooding, he thought his approach was to create special districts to pay for flooding changes and prevention. Special districts are taxing jurisdictions. Ladies and gentlemen, we pay enough in taxes. We shouldn't be taxing the people in this district more. We should be working smart with federal resource for the taxes that you already pay to fix this problem.
Well, Congressman, you can respond to that as part of this next question because it ties in here.
Sure.
We're talking about the cap on state and local tax deductions. Art submitted the question to us on X, formerly known as Twitter, asking what has Congressman D'Esposito done in his first term to repeal the SALT cap? We want both of you to weigh in, but we'll start with you, Congressman.
Yeah, so first off, I'll comment quickly on Laura's comment about this special taxing district. First of all, nobody should be commenting on taxes, especially when she had an opportunity to vote for a bipartisan tax cut, and she proudly voted no, and actually admitted to News 12 in an interview in 2018 that yes, her proposed budget would raise taxes. So I've cut taxes, and Laura Gillen has raised taxes. When it comes to the flooding, I was referencing an opportunity for low-lying municipalities to invest in bulkheading along the entire area. What's happening right now is people are investing in bulkheading, they're making it higher than others, and the flooding continues. If we did it as one large project, we'd be able to stop so much of the flooding on the South Shore. It's not about taxes, it's about saving people's homes and their businesses, and it's about decreasing flood insurance policy. When it comes to salt, I have worked every single day to restore the salt deduction. Laura is going to say, well, he's been there for 2 years, they have the majority, and nothing happened. That's because we are stonewalled by Democrats in the Senate and in the White House. I want to rewind back to the 117th Congress, where Democrats had the Senate, they had the House, and they had the White House, and they did nothing with salt. What we've done now is we put legislation on the floor, we've created an opportunity, and we've built coalitions. You look at the last vote that happened in restoring the marriage penalty. There were Republicans and Democrats that voted for that would have never. And I do want to point out that when we put that on the floor, every single Democrat from New York voted no. And as of right now, the only nominee for President of the United States who's talking about restoring salt is Donald Trump.
Laura, your response on salt.
So the congressman has had 2 years to get this done. He promised he would get you back your salt deduction. He's in the majority. He said he's been stonewalled by Democrats. He doesn't need one single Democrat. He's in the majority. If he was an effective congressman, he could bring this bill to the floor and get a vote on it. And he says Democrats didn't deliver. Tom Suozzi got this passed in the House. He has failed. We need our salt deduction back. Believe me, I pay property taxes. I know how important that is. And when it comes to taxes, he is the person, first thing he did in office in the town of Hempstead was raise your taxes. Next year, he did it again. The only time he stopped raising taxes was when I was there. When I was town supervisor, your taxes were lowered 2 years in a row. I'm gone. Now today, they're going to go up 10%.
All right, thank you, Laura. Stay with us. This debate continues right after this. Welcome back to our Vote 2024 election debate from the Optimum headquarters and News 12 studios. The cost of buying and renting homes here on Long Island is a major concern for pretty much everyone. We've seen prices continue to go up. One of our viewers, Dominic, wants to know, how will you support initiatives to build more housing in our district and bring down the cost of housing and rent? Laura Gillen, we'll start with you on this one.
So look, the other day I was at an event in town and I met a friend of mine who's a realtor. And I asked her how business was going, and she said, well, it's slow because there are no houses to sell. We have a housing crisis in this county and across America. I have 4 children. I want my kids to be able to come back here and live here, but things are just not affordable. We need to tackle this problem, but I'll say that we need to tackle it from the bottom up, not from the top down. I was proud to join with Tom Suozzi and other Democratic officials to push back against Kathy Hochul's housing plan. As a former Hempstead supervisor and local official, I don't think anybody in Schenectady has the right to tell me and my colleagues how to zone our own town. But we need to do something to address this affordable housing crisis. We need to look at perhaps blighted areas and find ways to build affordable things so our students and our seniors can afford to live here. And I was proud of the work I did with my colleagues in the town government to work on Baldwin revitalization. That is the way to do this. You go to a community, you get the buy-in. We had meetings after meetings spearheaded by me and Republican Majority Leader Erin King Sweeney, where we talked to the constituents in the district about what kind of density they could have. We got grants from the federal, not from the federal, from the state government. We got an Empire State Development Grant. And they told us, they awarded us that grant because Erin and I went there to present together and did it in a bipartisan fashion. That's why we got the grant. But unfortunately, elections have consequences. I don't know what happened to the $10 million we got, and nothing has happened in Baldwin since I left Town Hall and Erin left Town Hall.
All right, Congressman, on housing and creating more housing solutions.
Sure. So first, I think that Laura, again, is misstating the facts when she says that she joined Tom Suozzi against Governor Hochul's housing plan. That was months, if not almost a year after it was announced, where town and local officials were calling for they were absolutely against again, the overreach of Kathy Hochul trying to take away zoning rights from villages and towns. Same thing that she kind of did with congestion pricing. She was silent about it until it became a political issue, and then she joined forces and said, this should stop. When it comes to housing, what we need to do is what I think is what I've been doing all along. Find smart developments in communities that enable people to stay there. I think that we need to revitalize our main streets and downtowns, provide SBA loans, and work with the National Chamber of Commerce to find ways to invest in downtowns where you can shop on the first floor and have nice living above, the way to keep people in these towns. The same thing that I did as a town councilman, and sometimes it was against what Republicans thought was a good idea, but we invested in smart projects, whether it was overlay districts, whether it was transit-oriented developments, whether it was revitalizing downtowns. That's what we must continue to do, and we obviously must continue to make sure that we work as hard as we can to spend less. Government is bloated, especially the federal government, and we need to cut down on spending. And unfortunately, the reason why the housing market is so tough right now is because rates are through the roof because of the economic disaster that Biden and Harris have created.
All right, let's move on to the lightning round here. These are rapid fire questions. We pick up the pace a bit. That could be about anything. Quick answers only, please. And Laura, we'll start with you. Should Governor Hochul reinstate congestion pricing to help fund the MTA and the LIRR next year?
No.
Absolutely not.
All right, next question here. Congressman D'Esposito, one of your stances has been to protect girls' sports. Of course, earlier this year, Nassau lawmakers approved a bill banning transgender athletes from playing on girls' and women's teams at county-run facilities. Would you support a similar federal measure?
Yes.
Supervisor Gillen?
I think these decisions are best left up to sports leagues who know what the problem is and how to address it.
All right, Laura, this one, we'll start with you here. County Executive Bruce Lakeman signed a first-of-its-kind mask ban in Nassau County. It's a county measure, but do you support that ban?
Look, it was aimed at addressing anti-Semitism and violence, and anything aimed at that and curbing that, I do support, but I do have health concerns about it.
Congressman?
I do support it, and to Laura's point, there are restrictions which eliminate any problems with health.
All right, should the FAA do more to reduce air traffic over Long Island, Congressman?
Yes, they should.
Laura?
100%. Folks in Elmont tell me that this is a really big problem for them, impacting their lives.
Congressman, will you accept the results of your election and the presidential election?
Absolutely, and I most recently signed a unity pledge, signing on with Democrats and Republicans to say that after all necessary steps are taken, I would absolutely agree to the election results.
All right, former Supervisor Gillen.
Unfortunately, I can't believe that that is a question, but I will accept any election results.
All right, and now we've received several questions about this next topic. Do you think in-person town halls are an important way to get feedback from residents, and will you commit to holding them? Laura Gillen.
When I was town supervisor, I held over a dozen town halls all across the town so residents could know what was going on in town hall. My opponent has not held one in-person town hall as your congressman. I will.
Congressman?
I've done thousands of events in my time as a congressman. I speak to the people and hear their voices every single day.
All right. Time now for closing statements with candidates, each having 2 minutes here. And Congressman D'Esposito, you are up first once again, as per the coin toss.
Well, first and foremost, again, I want to thank News 12 and you, Rich, for hosting this debate. The 4th Congressional District needs a bipartisan leader who has delivered results. I am that person. 11th most bipartisan member of the House of Representatives. I've delivered millions of dollars in funding. I've passed multiple pieces of legislation to protect Medicare, Medicaid. I've made sure that we've passed legislation against anti-Semitism. I've used my time on the House Homeland Security Committee and Transportation and Infrastructure Committee to actually deliver for the 4th Congressional District. Being in Congress, you need to create coalitions. If you think dealing with individuals in your own party or other parties is tough here, you should go to Washington, D.C. I've been able to build those coalitions. My opponent, she raised taxes as town of Hempstead supervisor. She voted against a bipartisan tax cut. She tells everyone she cut taxes. Well, that's because Republicans and another Democrat voted against her tax hike. She has spent this entire campaign spewing and peddling hate, lies, deception, and division. One of them we talked about a few minutes ago with regards to her abortion video and campaign. You could talk about her attacks on my law enforcement profession. The fact that I spent over a decade as a decorated, left the NYPD with over 50 medals, arrested over 600 individuals, taking hundreds of illegal firearms off the street, dismantling gangs. That's the work that I've done. And then I went to Congress and worked in a bipartisan fashion to, again, work as hard as I can to deliver for this district. And I have. Democrats in the Senate have been in the way. And she talks about this bipartisan border plan. I just need to address it 1 minute. If it was such a deal, why didn't the Senate pass it? Ladies and gentlemen, I've served you well, not only as a town councilman, but now as a member of Congress. I ask for your support again on Election Day to know that you have a proven leader and not someone who is everything that people hate about politics and government. Thank you.
Former Hempstead Town Supervisor Laura Gillen, you have the last word.
Thank you, Rich. Thank you, News 12, for hosting tonight's debate. Ladies and gentlemen, again, I'm asking for your vote in the 4th Congressional District. And I think the contrast between me and my opponent couldn't be more clear. When I was supervisor, I went to work every day with a good government agenda. I didn't think about R or D. I thought about how is the best way I can deliver for all of my constituents. Government service is supposed to be about public service, not self-service. Elected officials are supposed to go to work every day to deliver for you. But my opponent is a part of the least productive Congress since the Civil War. Hyperpartisanship and dysfunction and chaos have prevented anything from getting done. And as you've seen tonight, he is more interested in blaming the other side than working with the other side. He has even acknowledged his lack of accomplishments recently in a TV interview where he told a CBS reporter, the things that people in this district are worried about now are the same things they were worried about 2 years ago. Well, he's had a seat at the table for these 2 years. You sent him to Congress to deliver for you, and he has failed. He has failed to get our SALT deduction back. He has failed to secure the border. He has failed to lower costs for the hard-working families of this district, and he has failed to secure our reproductive freedom, and in fact, he's done quite the opposite. And instead, what has he done? He took the same corruption he was trafficking in town hall and brought it to the halls of Congress. He took your taxpayer dollars and used them to pay off his friends, his family, and his lovers. Ladies and gentlemen, he is not working for you. He is working for himself. In Congress, I will reach across the aisle and start delivering bipartisan solutions for your family and for mine.
All right, thank you both. We appreciate your time and the spirited debate tonight. We want to thank everyone tuning in to our second Vote 2024 election debate of the season, whether you're watching on News 12, on our app, or on News 12 New York. We have one more debate left. Republican incumbent Congressman Nick LaLota will go head-to-head with former CNN anchor John Avlon for the seat in the 1st Congressional District. You can scan the QR code on your screen right now to submit your questions for that final debate. That's happening next week. And News 12 will have special coverage on election night, November 5th. We will be live all night long, tracking all the local races, as well, of course, as the presidential race. That all starts at 9 p.m. I'm Rich Barabi. Thanks again for watching, and remember, local elections lead to national change.
Long Islanders, News 12 is giving you a chance to have your voice be heard. Scan the QR code to submit your questions for congressional candidates looking for your votes this November. Your question may be chosen to be asked during the upcoming debate you'll see here on News 12. Submit questions for the candidates representing your congressional district now.